What's up, YouTube? It's Joe Cachapolia sitting on the couch, making some money, investing in fractional real estate online, as usual. Today I'm going to get to a subject that I've mostly avoided. I'm going to talk about Yhome, or if you probably read it, Why Home. If you've just read it and haven't heard someone say it out loud, that's how I've said it in my head for the first 6 months until I heard someone say it, last week or the week before. There's a large number of properties managed by Yhome on Lofty. If you've been investing on here, you've probably run into them. They've probably taken over some properties that you were already invested in. That's been my experience. I'm going to try to be, just as factual as possible, give you the experience that I've had with them. Um, I definitely have some additional uh, suspicions and thoughts about the platform. But I'm going to try to not give too much of my opinion, but more just sort of what it's been like to deal with them. But also talk about why I'm even bothering. Right. So one, initially, I had a couple bad experiences with properties they took over right away. Um, and I'll get into exactly what those are. They were bad from my perspective, but maybe somebody else wouldn't care. But so I've just been trying to avoid those properties. Unfortunately, at this point, they've taken over almost, a third of the platform. But more important, or maybe a quarter, I don't know, somewhere between a quarter and a third. But more importantly, all of the really good discounted tokens are all, or the majority of them are managed by Yom. And so that's a problem for me because that's where I've really been finding value on Lofty, right? Like there's a lot of deals to be had buying discounted tokens, either getting those properties running again and paying something out, and that's or getting them sold in the real world and getting paid out. And those two strategies have provided fantastic returns for me. If you've been watching any of my videos, you'll see that I made really good returns on a couple of real world sales. I've got a couple other ones under contract that should be, materializing soon. Had a few that, were just not paying out, but got stabilized under just a third party manager, but with some of us being, actively pestering that manager through Lofty or interacting with the manager through Lofty, sometimes changing who it is. Gets the property up and running again, filled the operating reserve, and then was paying out returns, and that pops the value, and was able to sell some of those. Um, so all those have been the best opportunities on here, far more so than like buying the $50 tokens that maybe it's a nice property and it seems like it's going to perform. I just haven't had the same level of success as I've had by buying these real discounted ones. And so at the moment, most of those discounted ones are run by Yom, and it's tough to shop them. And I'll give you a couple of examples why. This is one I bought just a couple of tokens last week. Um, it's been managed by Yom. I know they've done a renovation, and the renovation is, I think what he said is it's done, but they're waiting for something. That might actually be this one, or yeah, I think it's this one where the renovation is done, but there's some problem, a city violation on the outside. I don't know. It's one of these two, but the issue is he says there's a renovation. When asked, won't provide any sort of details as far as um, what the budget was, how much is going to be owed, and so if I want to buy into this token, I have to completely guess, right? I can't do any of the normal due diligence that I'm doing on on a regular basis on the properties where I'm sometimes that information has lagged from other property managers. But for the most part, we've gotten at least, we haven't spent money without a vote with other properties, right? And we haven't, when there is a lag, we're typically able to at least request that information. And I haven't had any problems getting it when I've done that, through Lofty's ops group or whatever, if we haven't received something from the property manager, have had good luck asking them to ask the manager specific questions, getting responses, and if not, have had okay luck, at least really just once that I initiated, but switch property managers to one that got a property up and running again, that had been struggling, and so that's how it works when I'm looking at properties that Yhome doesn't manage, but when it's ones that they have managed, so he basically has the right to do a full renovation of the property, not provide any estimates up front, not provide any bids from contractors, just goes ahead and does it, and then is able to give us give the entity, our DAO or DAO, a loan for whatever he spends. And it's a low interest rate loan. It's only 6%. So that's great. But we're not getting any input on the front end. And so I know that a renovation was done on this. I don't know how much was spent. It was such a cheap token price that I still went ahead and bought this one anyway. But I'm really just gambling on this. And I don't typically like to do that. But I did some rough math on my own as far as what I think on the high end they might have spent, and I think that it would be really hard for me to get hurt on this, but it's extremely tough to know because, like I said, I mean, there's just no transparency whatsoever. And so let me back up though. I guess I ran into this the first time. I owned some tokens in this property, Garfield. He took it over. It basically, we got no updates for months. And when I was asking, finally, I asked through the Discord, and he was like, "Oh well, it's almost done." I said, "Oh well, what are we spending?" And that's when I first found out. He's like, "Oh well, I don't have to tell you what we're spending. I just decide what we do. There's no vote on it, and that's how our agreement works." It's not super clear from their actual, they have a property management agreement. It's not really clear that that's how it's supposed to work, right? I mean, it says, okay, we're going to do these things, and I'm going to, he does say that he gives you quarterly reports, but it's not clear, and it wasn't when we voted on it, at least to me, that he doesn't have to tell us anything about the property. This became really clear to some people last week when this is one that they're managing, and he says that, oh, they listed it for sale and got an offer. I don't know if he said within 3 days or some short time period. And so owners in the Discord said, "Hey, what's the offer? What's it look like?" And he said, "Oh, that's not how it works. I don't tell you what that offer looks like. Once it's closed, I'll give you the good news." For me, this is one that I don't own, but if I owned this property, like that, it's crazy that as a owner, I'm not given information about a home being under contract, what the sale is going to be like. And so, for example, in several other properties, once it is under contract, there's a lot of trading that goes on because some people just want to cash out right away. And so, I by knowing what the discount, how much each token is going to get based on the contract price, there's a lot of trading that goes on. I did this in Dresden. I did this in Keeler, a couple other properties that once it is under contract, there's still the opportunity to trade. But you can't do that here because he's not giving us any info, right? And so if somebody wanted to get out, I can't imagine anyone buying in on just from a sentence in Discord saying, "Oh, it's under contract," but we're not gonna give you a copy of that contract. We're not gonna tell you what it is. Let me look in the documents folder and just make sure that it's not there, right? Because in every other one that I've been involved in when it was under contract to sell, it's only been a few so far. I've only been on the platform 6 months or 7 months. Yeah, there's no contract, right? But it's not, like to me that's just unacceptable. Like I don't understand. There's not a good reason in my mind to not share that information with co-owners, right? We own that property too. There I can't think of um a non-dubious reason to want to hide, to want to not share info like that. Like if it's almost everything that I'm doing on this channel is pushing for more transparency, more due diligence on investors' parts. more, more asking and demanding better information from everybody involved, like all the co-owners. If you watch the video I did with Earl, I think that he's doing a fantastic job being extremely transparent, and it gives me a lot of comfort in understanding, like, you talk about, you want to trust but verify, and we're not given the information needed to verify the things that we're being told with these properties. I mean, maybe once it's all done, we will, but I don't want to have to wait 3 months to find out if I made a good deal, right? I want to be able to dig into that property and know right away. And so I think that that's actually hurting people on the buy side. Like, why would, I mean, this is a tremendously cheap token if any of my assumptions about what they've spent is accurate, right? But we're not going to know that until, I don't know, it might be 3 months from now before we get a report that actually says what was spent, what the tenants in. Um, Okay, so actually, this one, the required repairs totaling 15K. So okay, that's good. Maybe we're going to find it earlier, but there was some discussion about, okay, is this in addition to some other expenses? And he was like, oh well, there might be other ones I don't know about, other unpaid bills. So we have, some number, but like we have no idea what this was spent on. Um, so that this was part of my guess, right? And I took this number and I looked into it, and I'm sorry, I get these all sort of blend together because I've looked at a whole bunch of these at this point. But so this is one we have some, but this wasn't we didn't know about this ahead of time on this one, I don't think. Um, because every time that somebody asks for that, he's like, "Oh well, I'll let you know when we are done, or I'll let you know at the end of the quarter." And it's like, if I'm trying to buy or sell this token today, it doesn't do me any good that I'm going to find out something 3 months from now. So I think the concept of quarterly reporting is perfectly fine. Like, if you want to give me a big chunk of data every quarter, I'm okay with that. But you can't, like, hide the ball in between, right? Like, if there are new bills, there's no reason not for those to not be in the Dropbox. If there's new estimates that come in, like, when there are changes or when there are things that are going to impact the price, we shouldn't have to wait 3 months to find out about that. So that's my issue with that one. I still did buy into that. I bought some of this one as well. Just again, the tokens were super cheap. Um, it does have an unpaid bill balance showing up here, but the stuff that's written up here is just not, it's not always clear, like, if that's everything, right? If there's other stuff that he spent, like, it's not, we just don't always know if that's the case or not, right? And so by not providing the actual, like, contractor estimates, contractor bills, actual budget for the repair, what we're planning to do, there's no way for us to be able to, in any reasonable way, figure out, like, is 1644 a good deal on this? And again, I think with if any of the assumptions, or if most of the assumptions that I've made on it turn out to be true, I think this is going to be a great deal, provided that this doesn't turn into a $50,000 renovation. And that's my real problem, is it can, and we have no say over that, right? Like, it is just it's a trust me bro situation, right? Like, it's, and he's pointed to a couple other properties that have done well. None of the ones that I've been involved in have, right, yet. So, I had Sarah, this one, Sarah Ave. We were getting a better yield before he took it over. Um, I think we got paid 6% for the month before they took it over, and we did end up getting a cash flow report, and let's see. Oh, and then we get this loan agreement, and so I don't know, if I am a former attorney. Nothing I tell you about any of this stuff is legal, right? It's not legal advice or my legal opinion or anything. I don't practice law anymore anyway. But like, when we're getting stuff like this, and they're like, oh, this is the level of detail we're getting for stuff, for, like, okay, we have a loan, but, like, that's what pops up when I click on loan agreement. Like, this isn't a loan agreement, right? Like, this is like, oh, this is, I don't know. So the level of documentation that we get is just really unacceptable to me. Um, when they're saying, okay, hey, we have this loan agreement, and they're telling me, well, and really all it's doing is saying, well, these are the things we gave you the loan for, and this is how much it's due. Um, I don't know. It's just not the way that I would operate, and if I'm managing other people's money, and that it just to me that's not really acceptable. And then we did get so that is one that has been collecting rent. It had a tenant in it to begin with. I honestly don't know why the co-owners voted to move it to his management because it was operating fine. We were just filling the operating reserve back up. It had a tenant. That same tenant has stayed in this whole time. They've paid, as far as I can tell, every month. Well, really, all we know is through December because even though we're sitting here close to the end of March, we haven't been given any information about what happened in January and February. And so, I could own this property. We could have a tenant that he evicted 2 months ago and I wouldn't even know. And so for me, that's really problematic. And then when we did get this, it's not really clear. So, okay, these are actually, okay, property management fee, great. Insurance and tax escrow and the admin, right, getting chopped up each month. So he's escrowing this somewhere. When asked about that, it's really just all in the same bank account as far as I can tell. Yhome just has one account that, okay, this money's going in there. And then I think that's where this operating expense allocation money goes as well, right? So he's basically putting away this extra money um, for operating expenses, I believe, but it's not even super clear. Like I asked him this question in a few different ways, and the answers I got just I don't love it, right? And so it looks like a certain a decent amount of money has accumulated that he's just holding for future expenses, and I understand we need to pay those expenses, but I want to know where that money is, and it's just like, oh, I've got it, right? And then and so after taking that out is showing, okay, this is the money that's going to be available for quarterly distribution. Again, I don't know. I don't know where this is either because even though we got this, I don't believe that we had any vote to distribute this, right? I think all we're getting is this distribution. I don't even know about this. So, that to me, and anytime you try to ask the question, you just get an answer. Well, consult the profit first system. And if it was clear, I don't think that a whole bunch of, I've talked to lots of other smart investors about this, and none of us really get exactly what he's trying to do. Um, and so I'm stuck in this one. Just I don't have a ton of tokens in this one. It's not a big deal. Was stuck in this one. I got out of it when they created the liquidity pool. I actually made some money just selling out of this one right away, and then the price dropped right back down to being one of the cheaper tokens on here. That was fine. If you haven't, this is an interesting one. I'm not invested in this one. I think I did a video about it several months ago, sort of before I fully understood what was going on with Yhome. But this is one where it was converted to a short-term rental. They didn't have a permit to do short-term rental. They got stopped by the city. I mean, they're like, go back and read this Discord. This was one of the first ones that I saw that really made me decide that I didn't want to be involved in those properties and was trying to avoid them. It wasn't until they started taking over more and more of the ones that I was already in that I decided, well, I've just got to try to get out of them, or I'm not going to be able to avoid them altogether. So let's maybe try to push for a little bit more transparency. And so I've done that quite a bit on the ones that I own, just trying to ask, hey, can you tell me what's going on with this? Um, the one that really is frustrating is he took over this one. It's a fully occupied duplex in Chicago. Is this a duplex? I think, right? It's one, so I owned this one and I owned Sangamon as well. And they're basically the same property. They're both a duplex. They're, a couple miles apart from each other in Chicago. Both of them finished paying off their, topping off their operating reserve balance at the same time. Sangamon's paying out a really great yield. Peoria is not, and it's because it's in the profit first system. Like, I mean, I just don't even like. So I was able to actually sell out a bunch of my Sangamon as, because the price spiked when that goes, and I made really good money on that one. This one, I'm just kind of stuck with this, it's not a huge investment, but I've got a decent number of tokens in it. And, y- you know, it's one thing when he's taking over properties that really need a rehab and there's a lot of work to be done. But like to take over one that is paying out a decent yield and then just shutting that yield off and being like, well, I got to just check on things for the next 3 months. Um, when it had a full operating reserve, like it doesn't make any sense at all to me. So that's one that it's like, and again, I mean, well, why the co-owners in this one voted to do it is beyond me. I'm just glad that the other one I mentioned, Sangamon, we voted against it when that got brought up, and it was somebody with like who owned two tokens in it or something that created the vote in each of the, maybe not on this one. Um, but so that one frustrates me a bit because it's basically the same exact property as the other one as far as the way it's performing, the timing of it getting filled up, and that Sangamon made a bunch really great return, and not a bunch of money because again I only had 130 tokens at the peak of that, and I've sold out and bought in and sold out, but and I could hold on to it for what it's doing right now and be perfectly happy with it, and so to just see that comparison uh, I don't really understand. I don't really feel like we're getting anything extra other than okay, we're paying um, a 15% property management fee now instead of 10. And actually, I don't know if we were paying 10 or even a little bit lower. And at first he's like, well, for Yhome, you don't pay Yhome a leasing fee, but he's hiring sub managers in most of the markets, and then you are still paying a leasing fee. Maybe in Chicago he's not. It seems like maybe he's not hiring sub managers here. Although it's really not clear to me. It's very hard to get a straight a direct answer to a question. Um, Anytime you ask it. And so, in any case, the reason I really want to talk about this is, we've got there was a proposal that went out across the whole, all of the ones they manage, um, asking to increase that or let's see, keep the management fee at 15%, uh, add some a bookkeeping fee, add a one-time setup fee. It had been an annual fee, but I think they're going to switch it to a one-time setup fee. Now it looks like he's going to ask for some equity in addition to that. Just given to him. A 2% fee for sales, which I mean, and if you haven't watched any of my other videos and you don't know who I am, I've been investing in properties since 2005. I've been working in the industry, helping other investors get involved since, well, about that same amount of time, doing a lot of different things and commercial but in any case, I've worked with, had tons of properties that have been managed by property managers. I've worked for property managers and helped other people. I've never had any of them ask for a fee when we sell the property unless they were a broker that was actually listing the property for sale for us. A lot of property management companies will do that, but that's not what they're doing. They just want to get a fee for being involved in the sale, even though they're not going to be brokering it. So I don't know, that to me, uh, it just seems a little egregious. And so a couple of people on the Discord have been like, well, okay, you're really what they're doing is they're trying to act like they're an asset manager, which I think I'm fine with if we're really getting something out of it, right? And but the other thing is that's not really what most people are on Lofty for, I don't think, right? Like, I mean, the advantage of Lofty is you aren't paying these huge fees to an asset manager, and you're getting to make your own decisions with other co-owners, and it certainly hasn't worked out for a lot of people, but for a lot of us, it has, right? And so, um, we compare when there was a video of Cal, who is the owner of Yhome, and he compared it to what he's doing to what Arrived Homes is doing. He's like, well, they're only doing something quarterly, and I think that's like a much different model, right? one, I would never put money on there because you get terrible returns because you have ridiculously high fees. And that is, it seems like what's going to end up here, right? And the other thing, we've only, uh, the management agreement that is on file for this one is from, let's see, where is it? Property management agreement. Let's see. Hopefully this doesn't freeze my screen recorder again. Ah, there we go. Um, yeah, it's just from October 16th, right? So over the course of 5 months, we're now being asked to pay a significant amount more than what is already, much higher than a market rate. 15% is, you don't pay a property manager 15%. So at the moment, in my mind, we're already paying a 10% property management fee and then 5% of gross revenue for asset management is a ton of money to pay for asset management on the front end, right? And then to also want to start charging on the sale and to get some equity in the deals. Um, it's just really hard for me to see, how that makes any sense to us, especially because of my experience with the properties that are running so far, right? I mean, they're not doing any better than they were prior to him taking over. And I know that's not true for all of them. And it's one of the reasons why I think that Lofty is really screwing up by making this a all or nothing vote, right? I think there are some properties that really need some additional attention, and maybe it makes sense for them to have to really give Cal a much better deal. But like this property does, it was doing perfectly fine before he showed up. Could be doing perfectly fine again in the hands of another manager. Um, but one of the problems is we don't know what money he spent since taking over because he might have decided to go do a renovation and not tell us about it. Um, and as far as he's concerned, he doesn't have to tell us about it, right? He's just able to make all those decisions, and like the whole outside could be renovated and we wouldn't know about it until we get the quarterly report and get the good news, right? I mean, like that's like one of the things he said in a few different places on the Discord, just saying like, hey, you'll find that out when we have the good news to give you. And it's like the thing that really, and I don't know Cal at all. I don't know, I don't have any and I really don't mean to imply like that he is um, intentionally doing something devious, hiding money, or trying to run a Ponzi scheme where he's taking on more properties, taking their money up front. None of that is what I'm implying or think is going on. Um, but it is the way that the system is set up, where where we have zero ability to check on um, anything going on. It's creating a scenario where that could happen to us. And so it basically means the 25 to 30% of properties that are on Lofty that other than the ones that are just so crazy cheap that I think it seems close to impossible to get hurt on. As soon as this one gives me the opportunity to get out profitably, I mean, it's, my average basis on this is about $22. So, if I sold today with fees, I'd actually lose money on these. And um, it's a property that should do perfectly fine. I don't want to do that just yet. Um, but so, okay, so why am I buying those other discounted tokens? Well, part of me is I just want to have more tokens to affect this next vote that comes out, right? Like, and try to, uh, I think if we're going to pay more, I think we should demand additional transparency on a monthly basis for some things, as far as what funds are in reserve, what have been put away, what's the actual running total on everything. All There's no reason that we can't find out all the bills that were paid each month. And then also, before any renovations, we should just get estimates. I mean, the fact that we're not getting any sort of estimate up front, um, and not because and not being able to be involved in any of those decisions is just really um, not a model I'm interested in being involved in at all. And so, if I have to just get out of the 4 or 5 properties that I'm in with him right now, and just write off, whole sections of whole markets on Lofty. I mean, that's it's unfortunate if that's the direction this goes. But I'm definitely, I've talked to a lot of other investors that kind of feel the same. Some of them have much stronger feelings uh, than I do, and I don't, I really don't think that there's something um, devious or underhanded going on. I think it's more of a, I don't want, this is how I run my business. I don't want to have to tell you any of this stuff. And even though you're an owner of this property, you've handed it over to me to take over, and that's that. I'm just going to do what I want to do, and I'm going to let you know when it's done. And to me, that's terrible customer service, right? If you think of us as the customers, because if you're the property manager, we are your customers. But it also, like I said, I mean, it really creates a scenario where we could easily be defrauded because we would never know for at least 3 months. And even after 3 months, um, I think it'd still be really difficult to be able to verify. Like, for example, we have absolutely no way to verify the funds held in reserve, um, because as far as I understand it, there's just one account that Yhome is holding all of the funds for all of these separate properties for. And so you'd have to go through and look at all the properties. I hope that's not true, but that's the understanding that I got when I asked questions about it. Um, anyway, if you do own some of these, I'm really interested to hear. One of the things that I've asked before and I have never gotten it, but if you've had good experiences with Yom, where you're like, yes, the way he handled that was great. I was happy with it. Actually made a lot of money. That'd be great. He's made a couple of claims. I want to just take a look at what they were. Um, oh yeah, so one, he's saying that 95% of the properties he's taken over are stable. If we're talking about, uh, you know, I mean, he always uses that term too, stable, and it's not super clear what he even means by it, right? But like he's said that numerous times in the Discord to try to say like, look how good I'm doing. But like for my properties that he took over, they were already stable, and at least one of them is not. And as far as I can tell, there are several that aren't, right? I mean, there's several that like 95% would mean if he's managing 50, then only 2.5 aren't. And that just doesn't seem to be the case when you look at all the properties. So I think that's not a real, I think that claim, I'd love to see his math on that, right? And then the other one is he says he's created a $1.5 million in value for token holders across the platform, and I really don't see where that is. I mean, like that's is he taking credit for this going up $2 since he took over management? Because it actually went up when we started getting paid out. After the vote, but before he took over, we were getting paid out from the month, from the yield from the month prior. Um, so this is not it. So I don't, I just don't understand where either of those numbers come from. If you've had a good experience though, and you're like, yeah, he took over this property for me and it did fantastic, and I'm really happy with how it went, and I want him to run all these properties. There's a couple of fans in Discord, and I honestly am a little suspicious. Like, are they, partners or, because sometimes I don't even understand the arguments at all that they make in favor of us not being able to know about, what's going on with the properties that we are co-owners in. And a couple more things I started talking about, how this vote is going across the platform. It's like it's all of the properties negotiating with Yom at the same time, right? Like we all have to accept the same contract. I think that's really worrisome for me from a, um, and the entity perspective, right? Like we all own individual entities, and they should be completely unrelated entities, right? Like we don't want to be in a situation where if one of those entities gets sued and later on down the road, someone says, "Oh, well, look, they're doing this collective bargaining. They're acting as a single entity." Um, they don't even have we don't even have separate agreements, right? It's like, okay, this is the agreement, and these are all the properties that are part of it. Um, that's super worrisome to me. I think it seems like we're taking on a lot of additional risk by acting collectively in this manner when the whole point is we should be, distinct entities. So that worries me a lot too. Um, and then there's one other thing about it. Hmm. Oh no, I don't think I put it on my list either. Um, yeah, the expenses. It's only 6 months since the agreement was made. That they've created this value. All of that. And the 6 month thing does really, I want to get back to that real quick. Like, if we're already, 6 months ago is when they said, okay, this is the 15%, and this is what we're doing for it, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, no, I need a lot more than that, and you don't really know, we're not going to tell you exactly the state of your properties. And one of the things he said in the Discord really worried me. He's like, or you can raise money from capital calls and then go to another manager. And it's like, well, wait a minute, what do we like? You're just assuming all these properties will need a capital call to go to another manager, and I guess that's to pay off the loans to him. But we're not even always aware of what he spent on to create loans up front, right? Like this, it could be, even though when we took this property over, or when they took this property over, there was a full operating reserve. It could be that he decided to do a exterior renovation, and that's gone, and then we take it back to another manager and have no reserve, right? I mean, so we're just really in the dark about what's going on. um, so I'm pretty uncomfortable about that as well. The collective bargaining, not know anything. It's going to drive me crazy. I think there's one more thing, but I don't want to ramble. I'm going to pause real quick and see if I can think of the other thing. Sorry about that pause. But the other thing that I'm worried about is, is um, our status as being not a security in jeopardy in any way, where now we're really turned over all control. And like, yes, okay, we can vote to get someone else in charge. But stockholders in public companies get to vote for different things, here and there too. And so, I don't know, I'd like to think that's something that Lofty's looked at, but it is something that worries me, right? When we're all of a sudden, it's not even that we're not in control anymore. We don't even get to know a lot of stuff. Like, he's like, oh, I don't want to give you information that might. He's actually said this somewhere in the Discord. He's like, well, I don't want to give you the information that might make you might want to trade on. It's like, well, wait, this isn't a security, right? This is like, we're all co-owners. We should all be able to find out everything about the property. It's not like, oh, this is public and this isn't. It's either this is our property or it's not. So that's the last thing I was thinking about. Um, I think that's really it for today. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. I always forget to ask that. Until next time, I'm going to keep making mistakes so that you don't have to.